I appreciate the opportunity to come here this morning and talk to you about the state's largest fruit crop. What I'm going to do is give a little bit of an introduction as to who we are and give you an idea of what is going on in the state in terms of the cranberry industry. And we'll talk a little bit about the current situation and then maybe take a look ahead for the industry. Let's see if we can get it. Okay. All right. Okay. Just to talk about the three organizations that I work with, it's the Wisconsin State Cranberry Growers Association. We are the, okay, I got to look at the slide. Give me a little bit here. We're the trade association for Wisconsin's cranberry growers. We were formed in 1887. We really have three core programs for our growers. One is education, others public communications, and the third is public policy advocacy. We also have a marketing order here in Wisconsin. It's administered by the Wisconsin Cranberry Board. They can assess up to 25 cents per hundredweight. Right now they're at 10 cents. The majority of their research is money is invested in research here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, public communications and education programming. And we have an arrangement where the marketing order, Cranberry Board, contracts with the Growers Association for management services. That helps us share resources and reduce our overall management costs for the checkoff. We also have a foundation whose main responsibility is the operation of the ownership and operation of Wisconsin Cranberry Research Station, which I'll talk about a little bit later. We also have some scholarship funds, and we also sponsor a Wisconsin Cranberry Leadership Development Program where we bring our growers in. Every 2 years we have a class that goes through a leadership program. And again, they contract with the Growers Association for administrative services. The cranberry itself is one of a few native plants that's cultivated as a food crop. It's a wetland plant. It's a woody perennial evergreen plant. It thrives in a wetland environment. The early cultivation here in Wisconsin was wild stanza cranberries that were found in central Wisconsin. We're the state's largest fruit crop, state's official fruit, and we lead the nation in production. We usually produce between 60 and 65% of the U.S. crop, and about half the cranberries in the world come from Wisconsin. Here's what the plant looks like. They're a low trailing woody evergreen vine. They're not bushes, they're not trees, perennial plant, and they put out uprights and the fruit is grown on that. The growing season for cranberries, really it takes about 14 to 16 months to grow a cranberry crop. Right now the fruit buds for next year's crop are on the vines. They're hopefully under ice and protected from desiccating winds, and they begin to set that fruit bud in August of the growing season. So actually, a grower is growing two crops at the same time, the one they're going to harvest that fall, but also trying to get those fruit buds to set for the next year's crop. So we have to take into account those management positions. Here's where we grow them. Concentration is in central Wisconsin. Wood County is the largest producing area. Jackson, Monroe, Juneau, Adams, and Portage have all have acreage. And are the major producing areas. The value of production, and this is from a study that was done at UC Davis a few years ago. The crop value, farm gate value at that time in Wisconsin was a little over 200,000. We had about 2,000 jobs that were generated by production. Value of processing was 728 million. Employment processing was another 1,900 jobs. So you can see that really cranberries are about $1 billion industry here that employs about 3,500 people. This slide talks a little bit about the crop, and it's one of the things Paul mentioned we wanted to take a look at. These numbers, I just got them last night actually from the U.S. Cranberry Marketing Committee, so these are hot off the press. If you look at the trends here, and I'll have some charts too, but over time, this is the sheet on barrels in the inventory that we have. As you can see, over time we've been having a decline in barrels of inventory. Back in 2017 and 18, we had an oversupply of fruit, primarily in the form of juice concentrate. Prices were depressed. We did do a supply management for 2 years. Mother Nature helped us with lower crops, and as a result, the ending inventories are down where they should be manageable. Here's the acquired fruit. You can see Wisconsin is the leader. This year we did about 4.8 million barrels. A barrel's 100 pounds of fruit. A normal crop in Wisconsin would be anywhere from 5.2 to 5.5 million barrels, but we're coming off a crop of 3.9 million barrels last year in 2021, which was really the worst crop that we've had in probably 10 or 15 years. So we're starting to recover. We're not where we want to be, but the crop is up. We have good fruit quality, and the inventories are a little bit above where they were last year for moving out. Here's a projection on sales. Cranberries are sold, fresh fruit's about 3% of the market. So when you buy the berries during the holiday season, that's about 3% of the crop. The 97% of the fruit is sold as a processed product, and the processed products, you see all of them, it's primarily juice and dried cranberries. So this gives you an idea of where we're projected to be in terms of the inventory going forward. The good news is that supplies are tight and prices are up. So, and I like charts better than graphs better than charts. So you can see here the cranberry acreage. We've been flat at about 21,000 acres here in Wisconsin for a number of years. We haven't seen new acreage go in. We've seen a lot of renovation go on where we're taking out older varieties, put in new higher producing hybrids. The slowdown in new acreage is probably due to cost, but also it's related to the difficulties of getting a permit to plant cranberries in a wetland, which has been an ongoing issue. In terms of total available supplies and total sales, you can see that the sales have kind of flattened out over the last, since, he's got his graph wrong, but in 2020, we're seeing them that they flatten out, but we're also seeing that supply is coming down. As we look at breaking out sales between processed and fresh, you can see that the total sales are up. The trend is up. We were down a little bit in 2020, but we rebounded in 2021. Actually, during COVID, we saw sales of cranberry juice increase dramatically. It was flying off the shelves. People were looking for a shelf-stable, healthy drink, and outside of water, they cleaned the shelves out pretty good. So we saw sales increase during COVID. In terms of fresh fruit sales, it's about anywhere from 250 to 350,000 barrels a year. That's dependent upon crop and fruit availability, and that's been pretty steady over time. We were down in 2021 just due to a shorter crop. And this is probably the best slide that I can show you about how the economic situation sits for our growers. This is the percent of carryover as a percent of total sales. And as you can see, back in 2016, if we hadn't harvested one berry, we could have covered all the sales. So we had a year's supply in the freezers. Prices were dropping down to about $8 to $10 to $12 a barrel. We did supply control and supply management in 2017 and 18. It brought supplies down. The crops were lower. Mother Nature helped us with that. Since then, we've seen a little bit shorter crops, and again, sales have gone up. So if we're in these numbers that we're seeing down here from, say, 2007, or excuse me, from 18, 19, 20, and 21, those are good for growers. That reflects that the supplies are tight, whole fruit supplies are tight, and that we're seeing that in increased returns for the growers. So I want to talk a little bit about international markets because about 35% of our crop is sold overseas. There's a lot of challenges with that. Our biggest market is the EU, and the EU is very difficult to work in, and for a couple of different reasons, but we've also targeted the Pacific Rim and South America. We were in China. We've kind of backed off on that. We're seeing a lot of retaliatory tariffs that are having an impact on our ability to compete with the Canadian growers who have free trade agreements into the EU, free trade agreements into China, where we're facing tariffs and retaliatory tariffs. During the retaliatory tariffs, we saw our sales, for example, of just juice concentrate into the EU went from about $35 million down to $5 million just because we couldn't compete. There was about a 30 to 40% price differential. The other one is MRLs and trying to coordinate maximum residue levels so that the crop and pest control tools that we use here are aligned with what the standards are in the other countries. And EU is driving that right now. And they're moving there, and they're encouraging the world to change the system of how those things are evaluated away from a risk factor to an environmental factor. That's going to impact everybody here. So in terms of the EU, we did get the tariffs, retaliatory tariffs are off. We've got a duty suspension on dried cranberries, and that's critical for us. That was 17%, and the retaliatory tariffs were 20%, so we were 37% higher than what the Canadians were, who are our main competitors. The second and fourth largest growing regions are Quebec and British Columbia and Canada. So the United Kingdom is important. Again, these are in China, some of the issues we face with the tariffs, and we backed off because of just a lot of the issues there and the difficulty of doing business. Going forward, one of the things Paul mentioned was where are the investments and what are the major investments in the industries made. The biggest one, and probably the most important one over the last 3 to 4 years, has been the establishment of the Cranberry Research Station in Jackson County. We've invested about $3.2 million in that facility. We partner with USDA ARS and with UW-Madison and UW in the Division of Extension. We do have we have established a ARS Cranberry Research Program here at Madison. We've got 4 faculty right now, new one in food science, an entomologist, genetics and genomics, and a plant physiologist. So we're filling out that team, and that's a tremendous amount of investment in both people and into infrastructure. This is the building at the station that houses labs, a maintenance area, an education center, and some offices. We went for function over form, and it's worked out real well for us. This is an aerial of the station. We've got about 30 acres in production. We have commercial beds. We also have variety trials and a 2-acre plot for that. And then we have some beds, 4 beds that can be used for side-by-side replicated trials. We also, just looking through a presentation that one of our extension specialists made last week, aside from the industry support for research, we've seen we have a really great team here at UW, and our partnership with Madison and with the Division of Extension is phenomenal. The team, not only from UW CALS, but also from ARS, work very well together. And as you can see there, we funded about $170,000 in projects last year, but there's 24 other projects that have been funded by outside sources, primarily USDA, SCRI, and SARE, hatch funds, and block grants from the Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection. Our Leslie Holland, who was our plant pathologist, was the lead on a grant application at USDA, and they were awarded $4.1 million, which is huge for us. We haven't seen that kind of money flowing into cranberries, and it's reflective of the people that we have here on campus. The field research at the research station, we have an advisory committee that works with made up of UW faculty that selects and approves any projects out there. To be honest with you, we haven't turned any down, but we had 12 conducted in 2021, and we had 8 last year, and we anticipate a lot of field work coming up. Just what the future is going to do, additional investments in research are going to be in production, environmental, health, products and quality now that we have a food scientist on board. We're going to see continuing renovation of marshes. There's new varieties coming out. Emily Bauer was with us last week at our winter meeting and indicated that WARF is going to have maybe 2 to 3 more varieties to be released. And we're going to see increased production as well as increased investment in domestic and international markets. So what's the future hold? Well, our growers are going to continue to adopt sustainable growing practices. We're going to continue to try and develop them and improve them as we go along, and that's why we have the big investment in research by our growers. The areas that we're looking at is water conservation and water quality, pest management, nutrient management, and obviously developing new practices for controlling some of the pests that we have on the marsh. And because like everybody else, we're losing products quite rapidly, and it's very difficult for us to get them registered. If you look back at the graph that we had of acreage, we've got about 45,000 acres of cranberries in the U.S. That's not a huge market for any of the chemical companies, but we work with IR4, with UW folks, and with the registrants to find things that are used on other crops that can be applicable on cranberries, and that's a lot of the work that we do. And we're going to continue our public education efforts to communicate with the consumer, to let them know how their food's grown, and have the growers tell their story. So with that, I'm all done.